Welcome to another episode of the Marriage Mentor Podcast with Eric and Jolene Engel, where Eric and Jolene answer marriage questions for believers, looking at the root of the problem instead of the symptom, always while applying God's wisdom and word for a Christ-centered marriage.
Hi, I'm Eric Engel, and I'm here with my beautiful wife, Jolene, for another episode of the Marriage Mentor Podcast. And by the way, we have been out of the podcast for quite a while here, and we've been going through some spiritual warfare. Nothing to do with our marriage. Our marriage is strong, but we are coming back. So I want to ask you, my love, what are we talking about today, since we're right before Christmas time?
Today, I wanted to have a podcast episode to really help the couple navigate through the stresses and messes that the Christmas season brings, because in my mind, Christmas equals conflict. Okay. Yes, it also equals Christ. And so what I would hope and desire and pray for every woman and man that's listening is that they move closer to Christ and further away from conflict that Christmas could bring. Because I know as a young bride, we're delusional as young brides, thinking we're going to have these wonderful Christmas experiences and all these fabulous memories and traditions, and it becomes a bust.
That's what I see on TV. I mean, all these Hallmark shows, they're just, everyone's so pretty and everyone loves each other and everyone has these wonderful gifts and everyone has a lot of money and there's no conflict with the family, or if there is, it's worked out within like an hour and a half.
Right. Which is not real life.
So,
although I do enjoy an occasional Hallmark movie, if only life could be that simple, right?
Right.
So, anyways, I just really wanted to do this show because I know over our 20 years of marriage, we've certainly had to navigate the stresses and messes that the holidays could bring to any couple. So that's what today is all about, and hopefully it'll be a blessing.
Well, a lot of times the holiday time, and not just Christmas, but other holidays as well, but I guess mainly Christmas, that time of year, it's not necessarily a happy time for people. They get very stressful when they realize that they have to go spend time with their family and an extended family that don't necessarily have the same values as they do.
Right. And they might have the same values as you do, but that doesn't mean we like them. Okay, so there's so many variables to the holiday season that I don't believe it's easy. And I don't believe it is a seamless experience. And it comes around every single year. It doesn't go away. Okay, the idea is, it's the birth of Christ. Yes, rejoice. Let's play the Christmas music. Please don't play Jingle Bells because that does nothing for me. It doesn't soothe my soul in any way. Yes, we display the nativity scene. Those are all great things for us to focus on Christ, but we still have to get up each day and figure out what does Christmas look like for us and how are we going to handle it, because there are expectations. There are expectations for us as the wife. There's expectations for the husband. There's expectations for extended family, usually the mother-in-law, and the kids have expectations. So to me, I've said over the years, I have this love-hate relationship with Christmas.
Well, you mentioned something which was just a brief statement. What is Christmas for us? Okay, because so many people, so many married couples, they just fall back into what was Christmas for them before they got married. And they're so attached to what they did in their family and what they did in their traditions and all that stuff, that they really fail to create their own traditions, their own standards, their own situation where Christmas and the holidays are going to be a great experience for them and their children. Right?
Right, but you have to take that step back. I know when you and I started dating that, 21 years ago, I came to your house for Thanksgiving. Now, before we went there, we were in Los Angeles on Skid Row where all the homeless was, because that was what I did for a living. I worked for an organization, Christian organization, that we provided meals to the homeless. And so Christmas morning, we're down in Los Angeles at basically a soup kitchen feeding them, and they're breaking down the door to get an extra cookie or an extra, chicken leg or turkey leg, because that they're starving.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, that's a great activity for any couple or any family to do. But let's just be honest here. I did that because you were there.
Right. Well,
Otherwise,
and I was there because I was getting paid to be there. Okay.
Right.
So, but anyways, our Thanksgiving consisted of us being there, and then I'm coming back to your parents' house, and I'm just following in line in what you guys normally did. And because my parents lived literally, 2 miles from your parents' house?
Yeah, if that.
Yeah, if that. We then stopped by there. Okay.
Right.
Very easy to do as a young couple in love. Not a married couple. Notice the difference. And not a married couple with children. Okay. Because we stopped doing the both houses. Let's go to both houses for the holidays, because it was just different back then. And I know then when we got married and then had kids, I had to step back and say, wait a minute, this is not working for me. This is causing me to stress out. And when I stress out, I don't know about you, but when I stress out, I don't get nicer. I don't get nicer. I don't become more patient.
Do you know a gal that does?
I don't. But for me, I don't get nicer. I don't get kinder. I don't have a gentler and kinder spirit when I'm stressed out.
Okay, so if I was to say anything to the husbands right now, I would say pay attention to your wife. And a lot of times she says, I can do this and I can do that. Well, she's going to say she can do that, but your job, one of your greatest jobs, is to protect her and to protect her emotionally.
Right.
And that also comes along with spiritually. But if she's emotionally overwhelmed, how is she going to function spiritually? How's she going to be with the family? And how is she going to look at you? Okay, so obviously that's something that's really, really important. And just like you said, you get married, you have kids, and what a lot of people tend to do is just pile on more.
Yes.
And keep doing what they did before, plus adding their family into it. It's just like...
And pulling off Christmas, because the Christmas season, in my mind, is like a several-day event that one would plan for. Okay? It's not quite the size of a wedding. When you're planning for a wedding, you plan several months. Okay?
Right.
You're not having to buy a dress. You're not having to, feed hundreds of people. But I bet you most women would like to look nice on Christmas. So they're thinking about what they're wearing. Most women are feeding people on Christmas. Okay, so it's just an event, but on a much smaller scale. And so now we've added even more to her plate.
Well, and here's what's interesting. Unless you absolutely love hosting a party and doing all that stuff, it is really taking your hectic life and amplifying it by 10 when you have to do that for all these people coming over and all that sort of thing.
Well, that's just the home. That's not even the presents that you're getting everybody. Because I'm sure that there are men listening to this, but I would imagine that most men only buy one gift at Christmas.
One gift.
For one person, and it's the wife. And the wife buys all the other stuff. Now, maybe the husband and wife go... it's different now because Toys R Us isn't even around. They're all closed. I mean, when my kids were little, we'd go to Toys R Us and shop for their gifts. Generally, it was me doing all that. Now
Right.
You buy just about everything online, and it's usually the woman who's doing all of that purchasing.
Well, whether it's online or offline, it is still the woman.
It's still the woman.
Because she is the cultivator of the home
Right.
and the relationships there.
Right. So you have this additional responsibility as the woman to pull off Christmas. That's what I say. That it's just like, can I pull off Christmas in a kind, gentle, loving, Christ-centered way? Or do I just need to turn into the Grinch and we do nothing, And trust me, I've gone back and forth with, depending on the season, it's like, this is all I could do. This is all that I could eke out of my weary body that can make sure that I'm still kind and loving toward my family during the Christmas season.
Okay, so let's talk about step number 1 then. Step number 1 is doing what?
Well, I say choose oneness because I had to learn that as a young bride, newly married. We're going to, you had these family traditions, these Christmas traditions that I thought, holy smokes, I can't do all this. I can't be around all these people day in and day out. Part of it was just there is an introverted side to me. Okay.
Right.
You're more introverted than I am. But to be around people on Christmas Eve, then Christmas morning, then Christmas afternoon, I'm like, is this normal? Is this what you guys normally do?
Well, here's the deal. My mother loves a party.
Right.
Okay. And so we'd basically have three or four parties within 2 days or less, a day and a half.
Right. Right. It was too much for me.
Right.
I didn't even have kids. And I'm like, I don't want to keep doing this.
But here's the deal. As a husband, it wasn't too much for me because all I do is show up and eat some food. Okay.
Right. You just show up and eat some food. But then as a single man, that's what you did.
Right.
And then when you took your wife showed up with the food.
Right.
Okay. So now I'm making food for all these different occasions. And I'm like, this is not enjoyable.
So as a husband, my life didn't change a whole lot.
No.
Okay. Just like marriage, my life didn't change as much. I'm still doing the same things I'm doing. And you're now cultivating all of these relationships and all these
Angry,
things.
by the way.
What did you say? Angrily you're doing that?
Well, yeah, because I was thrust into it because this is what your family did. And I'm like, this is not enjoyable. That I'm not okay with like being on this train ride. I'm getting off. Okay. But I didn't.
You wouldn't even slow down till the train stopped. You'd just jump right off. I know you would.
Well, but I didn't realize that this is causing me to be bitter and angry. Okay. I didn't know that, but I would question. I'd say, is this what you guys normally do? And then the next year, let's see. So we get married in March. Our first Christmas, there's no kids. The following Christmas, I had just given birth. So we have baby on Christmas number 2. And, you have these ideals of this young wife and mom of, oh, Christmas is going to be so special. But you don't realize, your kid's still throwing up all over you. Oh, and I'm pregnant the following year. So I have a 1-year-old and now I'm pregnant with the next one and I have all this morning sickness. And so Christmas, again, was like a bust for me that I'm like, when am I going to enjoy it?
I don't know what the problem was. I didn't have any morning sickness.
You didn't have any of that.
I'm
having to show up with like some fruit salad. And although I did say to your mother, no, I'm not bringing that. Okay. Because my second child had just been born and I have 2 kids under age 2. And there's like 20 people in the family. She calls and asks me if I could bring a fresh fruit salad to brunch on Christmas morning. And my response, no, I'm not doing that. I'll show up with the orange juice.
Okay, now that situation right there can cause a lot of pressure for the husband.
Absolutely.
Okay? Because all of a sudden, he's got another gal that he's got to consider and consider before anyone else.
Right.
Okay, so now the husband has this wife that's like, no, I'm not doing this. It's like, well, wait a minute. We always do this. What about mom? Mom wants this and she wants that. Okay. And it comes back to the idea that you have to leave and cleave, even in situations like this. Look, mom is no longer the first gal in your life.
Right.
Okay. And she's a distant second only if, number one, your wife is taken care of emotionally and spiritually and physically, etc. If not, then your mother is far, far away because that is your primary concern and your primary ministry.
Yes, for both husband and wife, your primary ministry is your spouse. It's not the in-laws or the extended family.
Okay, and so we have number 1, choose oneness. Well, choose oneness over grandma, okay, or grandpa. If we're talking to the wives, it could be she could be daddy's girl.
Oh,
and that sort of thing. But you choose oneness over traditions. Okay,
Yes,
because
and that's why I asked you. I said, do you normally do this? Is this how it has this? But I asked you those things even when I was dating, because I remember going out on this boat ride with a couple that I didn't really, it's the first time I met them.
Right.
And without naming any names, I get off the boat, the day's over, and I turned and looked to you when we got in the car. I'm like, do you normally spend a lot of time with these people? Because it was, the one person was very difficult for me to be around, that I'm like, I don't know about this. As I'm kind of vetting you to think if I'm going to marry you, I'm also looking at your sphere of influence here. I'm looking at your friends, because they're your friends. And you're like, oh no, I don't really see him a whole lot. And so I thought, okay, I feel better about this, because I'm asking myself, what did I get myself into? Because as that young gal dating you, I'm taking a look into your life. If this is what you're doing today, this is probably what you're going to be doing, what your Thanksgiving is looking like today is probably what it's going to be like the next year and the next year and the next year. But now that we're married, now I'm asking you, okay, well, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about Christmas Eve and Christmas morning and Christmas afternoon all with your family? It's a little overkill if you ask me, but your extended family, your brothers and sister-in-laws, all their relatives are outside of the country and the state, where mine is right down the street.
It doesn't matter where they're at. It matters how you feel. Okay.
Right. And so I'm asking you, how do you feel about
this? Here's how I feel. I show up and eat food.
Right.
That's how I feel. As a matter of fact, I feel like, hey, why not show up? Because I get to eat free food.
But it's not free, because we participate.
I understand, but and for the most part, I don't do any of that preparation, so I just get to show up and have a party. Okay. Now my family, here's what they do: they start a tradition, and then they'll start another one, and then another one, and so they'll pile on, and pretty soon, I mean, it's thing after thing after thing. Oh, and we do this. Oh, and then we added this, and it gets overwhelming. Okay?
Right. Where my family was a little bit different. We didn't really have a whole lot of traditions, and so then there wasn't really anything, and we're waiting for people to show up, and we don't have answers, and nothing is planned. And so, as I'm looking at how your family did things and how my family did things, and how wait a minute, all of this is falling on my shoulders. That's what I'm starting to realize, that I'm like, this is not working.
Because
we have to chart our own path.
I married Superwoman.
Okay, well, no. Okay, but as the woman, she's the one that has to carry out those plans.
Okay, so choose oneness over traditions.
Yes.
Choose oneness over debt. Tell me about that.
Well, it's Christmas. You need money to do some of these things. If you're going to buy gifts, that costs money. If you're going to host people over, it's going to cost money. Even if you go to people's houses, for the most part, you're bringing some type of item, whether it's a gift or it's food. It is more, people realize that there is an extra expense in December because it's Christmas. Even as poor as we were, living below the poverty level for years, you still wanted to be able to do something, whether it was, I baked some fudge. I remember baking fudge for you guys, not baking, because I don't think you bake it. Anyways, I remember, making fudge for you guys, which was very extravagant to even buy those ingredients. It did cost more than what we would normally spend, like in the month of October. You're not spending that money.
Well, sure. And then, and depending on your personality, mine is a little less this way than others, but a lot of people want to be acknowledged. They want to be loved. And certainly we all want to be loved. Okay. And so you might feel an obligation that you have to buy a gift for all these different people. As a matter of fact, we had a friend who had a list of how many people did she have to send cards to.
Oh, I have no idea.
I think it was like 70 or something.
Yeah.
And it's just like all of a sudden this joy became a task and became a burden.
Right.
Okay. And so who do you take that out on then? You go home and you take that out on your spouse, right?
Right.
Because of all this pressure. And so you have to choose it over traditions, over debt. You have to really, really rein in these standards and say, this is what we will and will not do. Okay?
Right. Because you lose the oneness between you and your spouse when you're just filled with all that stress. You're filled with the financial stress. You're filled with, pleasing all these other people. And, who gets the leftovers? That's what it comes down
So
to.
you have a verse here.
I do have a verse.
It is Genesis 2:24. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Now obviously we've already alluded to that, but what that really means is your spouse, your husband, your wife comes before anyone else. Anyone. That means your mother, your father, your kids, your friends. I don't care if grandma is sick. I don't care if grandpa is dying. Your spouse still comes before them. Okay? And that, I know that sounds harsh to a lot of people. And they say, well, I can't do that. Okay? If you want to have the type of marriage that God intended, you must do that because God commanded it.
Right. And by the way, a parent could die at Christmas. I had both mine die at Christmas.
Right.
So does that mean that we're not there? No, we were there. My dad died on Christmas Eve. The night before, we're sitting at his bedside saying our goodbyes as, he's going to be injected with morphine and, his systems are going to shut down. So a lot of what you're saying is really communicating what's important at this time. During this Christmas season, what's important. Because as the Christmas season comes and goes year in and year out, you're faced with different seasons. You're faced with different, you could be bringing in a newborn one Christmas or burying a parent the next. So you have to look at what is taking place that year. And, I enjoy traditions because I believe that traditions create memories. But I'm not going to attach myself so strongly to the tradition that I lose sight of what's going on in my home that time of year. Okay?
And lose sight of the ultimate celebration to begin with.
Right.
Which is Jesus.
Right. So, because there's nothing to me that's worse than saying that I'm a Christ follower, but I don't act it during the Christmas season. Or I'm a Christ follower and I don't have a Christ-centered marriage because I've chosen to be so consumed with the preparations of Christmas that I've neglected, really my marital relationship.
Right. Okay, so number 2, which we've also touched on, set boundaries with kids, friends, and extended family. And you have this verse, it's a great verse from Matthew 10. It says, "For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's enemies will be those of his own household. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." Matthew 10:35 through 37. And ultimately, bottom line is, it's about Jesus. It's about Jesus. And it is not about any of this family stuff. TV and all the media says, oh, Christmas is about family and it's about all these peripheral things. It isn't. Okay? Christmas is about one thing. And if you think it's about anything else, then you need to go back to the Bible because at least our Christmas and the idea of Christ in Christmas, Christ Mass, okay, it's a celebration of the birth of Jesus in our society today. Now, I don't want to hear any garbage about what it used to be or what, any of this other stuff, okay? What it is today, it's about Jesus. And if you're a believer and you're listening to this podcast, then you should be about Jesus as well, okay? And so anytime that we're trying to please someone else, Jesus said that I'm going to set you against your household if they aren't followers just like you are.
Well, yeah, and you could certainly have many, many couples today where they might be the only Christians in the family. And,
they might.
And they might be going to family gatherings of unbelievers.
And they have to decide, they have to make a decision. They have to make a decision between their celebration and being a witness to their family.
Right.
Okay? And by the way, I want to give you license right now. There is nothing wrong with saying, hey, we need a break from being a witness and we're going to celebrate Jesus. Okay? So we're not going to be at every family event. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. It's something that we've certainly done over the many years of being married. Because when you're going into a family gathering of a bunch of unbelievers, that is, either Satan's lair,
Right.
okay, depending on the situation.
Right.
But it's also a mission field.
Right.
So how spiritually strong are you in that moment to go into that situation? We've had years where you and I, we were spiritually strong enough to go into that. And other years it's just like, I need to just be at home and have my place of refuge here.
Right.
And then, kind of, because we get, battle worn.
There's times when we've gotten our teeth kicked in, and we're just like, we don't want to go out and expel that energy. We just want to have a quiet time here with our family.
Right.
And by the way, Jesus gave great examples of that, because he was with the crowds and he is ministering, but there were times when he drew away. Okay.
He got in a boat.
Right.
Okay? He had to go so
Right.
far away from people that the man got in a boat, because in a boat, you can't be touched by the crowds.
Right.
Unless a bunch of other boats are coming up on you.
Basically, and he was with the disciples, which was really his family at that time.
Those were his people. That
Right.
was his circle.
Right.
That's where he's safe, where he didn't have to continually pour out. And there are some seasons in our marriage, in our family life, and I'm sure in other people listening to this, that you need to be discerning about the season that you're in. Are you ready to go back out into the mission field and be that witness and be that example? Or do you have a family where you could go in and they are that refuge? Like, praise God if you have that, that you're able to just sit and kind of not necessarily be ministered to, but you don't have to have your guard up.
Well, but they are ministered to. A lot of times you can go home and you have a father or a mother or a brother or sister that is there to encourage you.
Right. So I think each couple has to look at, the extended family, and when you go into that situation, what kind of boundaries do you need to have? Because I think when you don't have boundaries, that's when a lot of conflict is created between the couple. Because boundaries with extended family, they're not established.
Right.
And you guys aren't on the same page. You've just been blindsided by, because you were, the wife was in the kitchen and the mother-in-law said something, and now the wife's in tears and the husband's like, what happened? All these little things that could take place that, the sad thing is we live in a fallen world. We are selfish individuals, broken individuals, and we unfortunately attack others, and our expectations are higher than what they should be. And so there's just difficulties of just common everyday living, and then Christmas kind of compounds that.
Okay, so number 3, you wrote down know your limitations, financial and physical. So let's battle both those. As we start off with financial, you and I know what it's like to have financial limitations. Or,
Yes.
I mean, quite frankly, we had some Christmases where we had to tell our little children that there aren't going to be any gifts. There aren't going to be any tree. There's not going to be a whole lot of money for anything. And yet, people that we know or friends that we know would show up, or even people that we don't know, they'd show up with gifts and trees and such for us. And the Lord took care of us. So when it comes down to the financial limitations, we just gotta remember who it's about and what it's about, and teach our children. And that was always hard for me, because I had this idea that I wanted to give great things to my children, a great life, and buy them all this stuff and all this. And you'd always remind me, you'd say, this is part of their testimony.
Right.
And that wasn't easy to hear. It still isn't, because a good father wants to give things to his family, wants to give things to his children, and that sort of thing. But still, when it comes down to financial, you have to know your limitations.
Well, it's just not wise to overspend because it's Christmas, because you're going to eventually have to pay that bill. Okay.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with setting a budget, saying this is what we're going to, give at Christmas time, even if it's a meager budget, even if it's so meager that there's one gift under the tree. because part of us as Christ followers is us learning to be content. 1 Timothy 6:8 says, so if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. Because here in America, regardless of how much money you make or don't make, we still live very well compared to the rest of the world.
We do. And, then the next part is the physical limitations. Because, I don't know how many people are listening to this who are actually ill or not as strong as they should be. But when you take and you add on the pressures of Christmas, I know in our family, we would tend to get sick. You and I would get sick. And one of us gets sick, then everyone gets sick. And we had to pare down, we had to back off and realize those limitations so we could actually enjoy the time rather than spend it
in bed sick.
In bed sick or, sneezing and coughing and hacking and wheezing, and that sort of thing.
Well, yeah, you have to learn to say no to things because just because you may feel healthy that day doesn't mean that come December 25th, you're going to be able to get out of bed. We just don't, we're just naive in some of that stuff because your kids are probably going to be going to more Christmas gatherings or productions. More people are out, during the Christmas season. So much so that I can't stand to go shopping because I'm like, where are y'all coming from? Then I'm like, oh, make sure I wash my hands the minute I get home because you're just around more people and more people. There's more.
Well, just last night, we chose instead of going to a restaurant or going out to get fast food and eat in our car so we didn't have to deal with all the crowds.
Well, right, because my lymph nodes were swollen and a few nights earlier I had like double ear infections that I'm trying to get over that it's just like everything has to kind of go back to I need to be able to finish my race. That's what it comes down to. And I don't want to be so sick during the season that I can't do anything.
And defining that race, number 4, you have seek the approval of God, not man. For they love the praise of men more than the praise of God. John 12:43. And bottom line, and I know we're speaking to believers right now, so, this is kind of preaching to the choir. But bottom line is, stop and be still and realize this is about Jesus and what he's done. That's it. That's what it's about. If you can come together as a family and understand that if you give gifts to your children, this is what I would recommend. We tell our children that you get gifts because Jesus got gifts. Okay? And that's another way that we celebrate the birth of Jesus and what he's done for us.
Right. If you know your why, if you know why you're doing something, if my reason for doing it is to glorify the Lord, honor the Lord, imitate Christ, then that's going to help with my choices. Does it line up with my reason? So I think just asking yourself, who is it that I'm trying to win approval of this during this season, why I'm doing these things? Are you making that fudge, putting it in that little tin can and taking it over to your neighbor because you're trying to keep up with the Joneses? Or is it because you want to show them the love of Christ?
Right. Okay. I mean, here's a real challenge. Every gift you give to an unbeliever, tell them why you're giving it to them.
Right.
And what that's all about.
Well, and even to maybe it's a family member who you don't care for, and they are a Christian, and the Lord's wanting you to.
What are you talking about? We care for all our family members.
Well, but people could rub us the wrong way, and vice versa, and you seek to forgive and to be loving, even when you don't want to be, because forgiveness is a choice. So. There are those sticky, severed relationships that maybe the Lord wants you to reconcile, and the Holy Spirit's prompting you to extend that olive branch and be loving and kind and buy that, box of chocolate for grandma when you don't want to.
Right. Well, okay. And by the way, if anyone wants to be loving and kind to me, they can buy me a car or something. That'd be fantastic. If any of my family's listening right now and you've had problems with me.
Okay. Well.
Okay. Number 5, choose to live at peace with all men. Okay. Romans 12:18 says, if it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Okay? That's a tall order right there.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why I put it last. Well, not because it's a tall order, but because I'm looking at the scope of who comes first in the family life. Because you might be at odds with your spouse right now as you're listening to this, and you're like, I'm buying him nothing. He gets nothing for Christmas because he's done nothing, or vice versa. You know, she hasn't been a loving wife. She hasn't been supported. I'm not going to buy her nothing. Okay? I'm going to be Grinch. Bah humbug. Okay, you get nothing from me, or go buy your own present. Okay? That's really easy to do when you're at odds with your spouse, to have that thought. Okay? And I'm hoping that Christmas kind of gives you this time to reflect and reconcile with one another.
Well, it is a time where you can look and say, what is this really about? Who is it about? Because we are all so focused on ourselves most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, who do we love the most? It's me. I look in the mirror, I love myself, right?
Right.
And we're consumed with how we've been wronged and we've been treated and how we look and how we fit in and everything else. And take this time with your spouse and really focus on what it's about. Who is Jesus? Frankly, I really believe that none of us truly understand what Jesus did for us.
Yeah, and
Okay?
I think we can fully comprehend it.
We spend our entire lives moving closer to understanding what he's done for us. But really, as the creator of the universe who spoke the world into existence, the Bible said all things are created by him and for him. Okay? He laid his life down. And he said that no one takes my life from me. I lay it down. Okay? I just can't understand that. In my feeble state, I cannot understand doing that for a bunch of ingrate people that are imperfect and just cause me pain.
And unappreciative.
Unappreciative. Absolutely.
Right.
But he did. Okay, which is what makes him God and me not. Thank goodness,
Right.
But so take this time to do that. Take this time with the kids and say, I know that we've had Santa and we've seen Rudolph and we've watched the Snowman and we watched the Grinch and all this stuff. But let me tell you the real hero. And his name is Jesus.
Right. Well, putting the focus back on Christ with your kids, but it starts in your heart first. If your heart's not focused on Christ, you're not going to have a Christ-centered Christmas. And as much as I want to focus on Jesus, I have to know several things, and I'm going to choose to place my relationship with you above all others, because I don't want to fracture in our relationship in order to, plan this wonderful Christmas, because then you and I are at odds. And I'm like, that's not God honoring. But this last point, I want to say a little bit more. Choose to live at peace with all men. Yes, the Bible talks about that. As much as it depends on you. God is not advocating go spend Christmas with a toxic environment. That's not the same thing. Okay? Because there are some relationships, some extended family, where the relationship is toxic, and it is not for you to be in at this time.
That's a great point. And you know what? Some of those relationships, the rest of the family is going to look at you and say, oh, aren't you so self-righteous? Or, you're this and that because you think you're better than us. It has nothing to do with that.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Protect yourself, protect your spouse, protect your family. Husbands, protect your wives.
Okay, then. That's about it. We're Eric and Jolene Engel, and you can find us at joleneengel.com. Until next time, embrace your choice.
And we'd have to say, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.